Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to join us for the next hour. And a special thanks, of course, to AFP for having us and hosting this session today. My name's Brian Funk, and I'm joined here with my colleague Danielle Rice, who's our Senior Director of Solutions. And Danielle spends all of her days inside real world donation experiences. And her team inspects them, audits them, and analyzes them, looking at what happens to donation revenue pending what the donor experience of your giving form looks like, feels like, and how the experience plays out. And so today we actually have three folks in the room with us today. We've left them anonymous for the sake of the presentation, but you'll know who you are if you've joined us live. We have three folks that have been willing to have their own donation pages and websites live audited. So we're going to be going through real world proof points with our peers here in the audience today. And I want to do a quick setup because as we go through this donation experience rundown, we have a well-formed hypothesis through years of running these audits and looking at trends and data. And the hypothesis is your donation form is your most valuable asset. And we're going to be looking at, donors that either come ready to give and have made the decision, or donors who make the decision within the point of giving. How can we do a better job cultivating a seamless experience that helps keeps dollars and impact flowing towards your mission? A little bit of housekeeping today before I hand it over to Danielle. This webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available for replay. I believe within 3 to 5 days, the recording will be available. And we also have resources for you at the end. We actually have a free donation audit resource that you can opt into at the end of this presentation. And also throughout the call today, as we run through Q&A, there's going to be time at the end reserved for Q&A. And I want you to know, get active in the chat. I know folks are already introducing themselves. Let us know what organization you're with. And as you have questions throughout the presentation today, let us know because we'll answer your questions in real time the best that we can. And if you have insights and other thoughts, we want to try to make this as dynamic and collaborative as possible. So your voice is welcome in today's conversation. We'll seed answering your questions throughout and leave some space at the end for us to answer any outstanding questions. And before we dive in, we have a question for you, which is, in the last 6 months, where have you invested more of your time and resources? And just let us know in the chat, respond with A, B, C, or D. Have you spent time working on driving traffic through your emails, your ads, landing page optimization, the various formats and channels for all of your appeals? Have you been focused on the donor experience itself within the giving form? Are you equal on both, or are you neither? Maybe your focus is in other areas. So let us know in the chat. And I'm taking a look here. Okay, we've got some B's, we've got some A's, a lot of A's starting to come through. Oh, we have a C, C, D. Okay, great. It looks like we have a really healthy mix, Danielle, with a lot of folks putting emphasis and attention on how do we get more potential donors on our website, learning about our mission, and creating opportunities for them to give.
Perfect.
Danielle, take us away.
Thank you for that, Brian, and thank you for that quick snapshot around where we're standing in the chat. As the Senior Director of Solutions, is one of the things that I really enjoy doing is solving puzzles and trying to figure out how do we do this thing around optimizing the donor experience and what layer do we each need to play in this overall puzzle. Hearing a lot of and seeing that even in previous webinars and previous conversations that I've had with many nonprofits, it's something that is kind of a constant, right? When we're driving traffic, it's something that typically someone is responsible for. We've got budget assigned to it, but we don't always take that additional intentionality around the donor experience or other areas that we really want to optimize online and offline. And so we're really going to dive into that today, and understand, how do we do that? How do we take all the hard work in terms of planning campaigns, assigning budgets, being able to develop the right creative, and have it come through in that final leg on the donation form in that giving moment? Because I too have a hypothesis. Better donor experiences drive revenue. At the end of the day, if we can allow this to be in synergy with the rest of your fundraising and campaign strategies, then ultimately we'll be able to drive revenue, but more than that, being able to drive impact. And so, as we look at one of the things that really Fundraise Up is focused on, it's really about online conversion. And I think when I think about that at face value, we are typically double the industry average around conversion rate. Now, what does that practically mean? That means you've got the same donors, you've got the same appeals, it's the same economy, same time of year. And generally speaking, we will experience more donors choosing to make an additional gift when they land on that form. And it's not because something was structurally different or wrong with the campaign. It's because that last mile really gets the intentionality. But that's not it. That's not the whole story. We're really focused on these four different outcomes. And I'm calling this out to you early so that as we think about the audits that we'll see, as we think through the methodology at which we can continue to optimize, no matter what platform you're on, you have to be driving towards your end goal. And when you are able to optimize for conversion, it means you optimize for conversion rate immediately, but that additional conversion rate allows you to grow the value of those donors. Think about your email list size, your direct mail list size. If you're able to convert them more year after year, that's higher retention rates. That's a higher long-term value. That's a higher average revenue per donor. And when you're seeing that materialize and you have marketing spends attached to it, that's a higher return on ad spend and general ROI. And when you're seeing that kind of work well, it also means when you're ready for new donor acquisition, because we want to bring people in through the front door and make sure the back door stays closed, we're able to retain them, and we're able to invite new donors to opportunities that ultimately strengthen the mission and allow us to create more of that impact. That's really what we're focused on, not just, hey, how do we make the donation form look cool? Although, there's nothing wrong with the cool factor, but also being able to materially make a difference in each one of these categories that isn't just a nice to have, it's measurably how we take next steps towards greater donor impact.
Yeah, that's great. If I could add one other note here, Danielle, we actually, with all the nonprofits that we partner with, we run over 70 plus experiments and tests a year to try to move the needle on these four donor outcomes. And so we are, I would say, relentlessly focused on looking at how do we actually help nonprofits, again, to what Danielle's talking about, increase that conversion rate and compound the impact that you're able to make through your mission. I'm going to link in the chat our donor experience hub. If anyone after the session today is curious just to poke around and investigate, we publish all of our findings publicly. So if you want to look into some of the tests and experiments we run, I'll link it here in the chat.
Perfect. And like Brian started off with a question, I too have a question I'm interested to see the response on. When you think about your giving experience, would you say that the donor has already decided they want to give, therefore the form is a receipt? It needs to be something that just doesn't lose the gift? we need to focus on speed, we need to focus on trust, we want to remove any additional fields, or the form is part of the giving moment itself. It's where that final ask happens. It's where framing and the overall story and decision is made to move into a converted donation. Where I comment receipt or comment giving moment, depending on what you think the primary focus is for your donors when they hit your donation form. Brian, you'll probably see the chat a little bit easier than me. What are we seeing so far?
Waiting for some responses to come in. Let us know, do donors arrive to your online giving form having made the decision already? Or do you think that the giving experience helps them decide and make the gift? Oh, I'm seeing it can be both. Uh, the form is the moment, the giving moment. We have one, the form is the receipt. I think we have a pretty healthy blend here.
Perfect.
Thanks everybody for jumping in.
Thank you for jumping in. It was a trick question. I'll give you that. The answer is both. The donor is expecting to be receipted. They're expecting to be able to move quickly through the process, but also to understand who they're giving to and make sure that that level of trust is consistent there. It's also what helps them convert and move forward. The framing, the storytelling, the emotional side of the gift. It's not just a transaction. If I wanted to go buy a bottle of water, it's like, okay, I have a need. I make my transaction, I move forward. A gift is more than that. And it's kind of what separates traditional e-com and the for-profit side from a nonprofit gift, even though at face value, it seems very similar. I just want to like make a transaction and go. And so you have to think about it not just from a functional standpoint, but all the jobs that the form needs to do at that moment and the expectations that that donor has in their experience. And
And
oh, go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Brian, jump in.
I was just going to jump in and say Anne Marie in the thread made a great call out, which synthesizes this beautifully. And we're going to get into this with the 3 live audits that we're running today. Is if the experience is difficult, the donor walks.
Huge. Huge. And that's this first point here. Functionally, it has to work, right? Like someone can be really moved. They can feel like, man, this is something I really want to share with my family and friends. But if they cannot make the gift without fighting for it, they're probably just going to walk away. And honestly, that's part of Fundraise Up's origin story is being able to struggle making that donation and ultimately being able to say there has to be a better way, and there is. And so being able to not just functionally receive the gift is important. Your images, how you describe the impact of your organization down to a very specific level, being part of the mission. Can I share this? What does the follow-up process look like? These are all areas where, from a product perspective, we call these jobs to be done. But these jobs to be done are also impactful for building not just your donation experience, but your entire donor experience, including the donor portal follow-up, email follow-ups that are sent as well, what led them to the form. All of these things have to be aligned. All of these things have to be considered in terms of the functional, emotional, and social aspects in order to be able to maximize that donor experience and ultimately to build trust with that donor. They're not just trusting a form, they're trusting the organization, but more so they're trusting you. They're trusting, who's signing off on that email. How did I get here? Who's running this organization? They want to join in hand and partner in order to do that. So I don't want to just say everyone thinks the same, at the same time. You do kind of have a little bit more nuance in terms of what you are starting to see in maybe younger donors or general behaviors as we see more subscription focused. So you have the person, I'll call them my category A, someone who's paying for everything in their wallet. They expect immediacy, things to be done quickly, and recurring is just not normal. You know, they've got Netflix, they've got Amazon, they've got HBO. We've got the subscriptions, and we want to be able to make that donation. You also have the more traditional donor who's a little bit more literal. And so we may say recurring, and we know what we mean by that. But monthly is what they expect to hear because it literally sets the expectation around what is about to happen. You may have a recurring annual gift. There may be other cadences that make sense for your organization, but ultimately, whatever you have, you want to just be clear with what that looks like and set the expectation around what happens next. Because ultimately, if you only optimize for speed and you lose out on clarity, you miss out on that larger donor who may just need a little bit more detail in terms of what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to make that happen together. If I summarize all that into four key areas, that looks like clarity. So being very exact with what's happening, what's next, what are they agreeing to. That's cognitive load. More options is not it's not always better. Not always better options. If you have too many fields, you have too many decisions, and it's just like the person who makes decisions all day, and then you come home and it's like the last thing I want to do is make one more decision. If you are moved to give, we need to remove anything that's going to cause friction to your generosity. The device, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is really important because devices are even changing. Traditionally we've talked about desktop and mobile. Now it's AI, and AI is happening on desktop and mobile. And how does someone find my organization? How does someone give to my organization on that kind of interaction point? And that's something we also have to continue to focus on as we look at agentic giving. And then finally, payments. It's being able to accept more than just credit cards and making sure your form is smart or relevant to whoever's going to be interacting on it, and being able to take some of those next steps. All right. So I want to dive in before the audits in just two of these really quick areas, because I think it's going to help us look at, no matter what platform you're on, what helps you remove friction, and what ultimately adds friction to the process that you can just immediately start to make adjustments on. So what is costing you those donations, what's costing you those points in conversion rate? It's typically going to look like not being able to tie back to impact, having recurring in a separate area or drop down or not available at all, using some of that internal language, extra fields unnecessarily, and then no amount selected as the default when it loads. What that looks like practically is being able to show those outcomes, whether that's quantifying it into a specific amount, talking about what happened last year, what you're planning for next year or this year, being able to show side by side more of that comparison of one time and monthly and upsell to it. And I'll show you some examples of what that looks like later on. And then being able to anchor to a pre-selected amount. This is really important. Like, it seems like a small detail, but an open box without designations around what amounts that you're recommending to anchor you into is actually not helpful. It seems like, hey, we appreciate your generosity. Give us whatever you think would be helpful, whatever you want. But it actually causes a moment where they have to pause. Okay, what's my budget? What am I thinking? But being able to ideally in real time adjust those, but at minimum have default selected amounts, it anchors their mindset into, okay, what do I think will be most impactful based on where this gift will go? But then ultimately, what will also be able to adjust that field if you want to. So it doesn't lock them in.
Yeah,
Then, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say all really great points, and something that a thread that I wanted to tie together from the previous slide, Danielle, with a comment that Franklin made in the thread. He was sharing that their organization has a strategic focus on attracting new donors in order to build their recurring pipeline. and they're looking at adding, new payment options like, Venmo and Cash Apps in order to, meet a younger generation. And I just wanted to call out that something that we're actually seeing in our own data in terms of trends that are defining 2026 is two things. One, we saw mobile giving crossed the 50% threshold for the first time. So 52% of all donations are coming in through mobile. And the other thing that we saw early this year is we actually saw a rise in the United States, a 38% increase in the use of Apple Pay and Google Pay. So that means that folks are, the same way that they're shopping online at Amazon, they're also increasingly using these native payment methods on their phones to make donations with more ease. So those are just some threads that are kind of tying together. And Franklin, I just love your focus on where you guys are doubling down.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. A thing that I also want to call out here as well is, the device and payments. You were just talking around Apple Pay, Google Pay, being able to see that up front, and being able to take those really clear next steps, depending on what kind of device they're interacting from. Those are those little micro moments that make a big deal. If I'm on an iPhone, don't show me Google Pay, vice versa. But being also able to just load it in under 2 seconds. And that's not just like vanity, got to get it under 2 seconds, but it really makes a material impact where everything is faster and faster, especially online. And being able to do that in a way that doesn't just have you looking at a load screen. I like to call it the scrolling wheel of death. That's not something that inspires generosity. So making sure we're looking at that as well is super, super key. But I don't want to just focus on, hey, here's a checklist of things, go do those. A lot of these things are ways that you can continue to optimize. But at the end of the day, we want to focus on just the fact that donors want to give. They show up. They want to be inspired. They want to partner with your organization to make a bigger difference, not just in their own lives. This is a moment of generosity in the lives of other people. And so our job is just to make it as easy as possible and walk away. Allow that giving moment to happen and then be able to steward it very well. So I'll
Love
say
it.
all that and then would love to get deeper into the audits with the rest of our time.
That's great. Before you do, Danielle, Christy had a nice question in the chat. She was asking, with increasing costs, is there an industry standard for a pre-selected gift amount that you'd recommend? Or do you have a recommendation on how to handle suggested gift amounts?
Yes, I have two thoughts on that actually. My preference would be let's be as personalized to that donor as possible. For example, if Brian shows up to my form, that pre-selected amount should start to mirror what was Brian's history and Brian's potential. A lot of that can be done through AI. So we have AI optimized giving amounts. Let's say you do not have that available. Next best option would be to look at your data and look at the impact that your organization wants to make and start to multiply based on that. So if you are seeing some consistency in some giving areas, what does it look like to test into 5% more, 10% more? That's one of the things that Brian was just talking about early on is testing and how the platform handles a lot of that for you. If that's something you don't have access to today, love to chat with you, but also um, anchor it in your prior giving amounts and what those cohorts are and continue to test that until you get to a sweet amount because ultimately you'll be comparing volume versus your average gift. The lower you kind of go, typically on average gift, the higher the volume and vice versa. And you're really looking for that most optimized amount. It's ultimately always going to be better if you have an AI algorithm doing that instead of just looking blanket across whoever comes to the fore. Does that help?
Really helpful. There's some follow-up questions that I actually think this is a timely place just to give some more context. Um, when are too many payment options too much? Or, how where do you strike a fine balance?
Yeah, good question. So too much comes down to the relevance and the placement. Um, Typically you want to, for example, on Fundraise Up, enable the options and then allow the AI to determine off of a number of different factors what are the best ones to show to this person at this time. So example, if I have an Apple iPhone, it's not going to be relevant to see a Google Wallet and vice versa. Outside of that, when you start to get into things like PayPal, how much does your audience likely use that? And that's when you can do studies around your donors in particular before it gets to the form. Again, I'm biased, so I'm going to recommend leveraging Fundraise Up's AI to just take that off of your hands. However, I would say focused on data, focused on testing allows you to optimize that. You add one in, see how it performs, and then learn which ones are going to be able to work the best for your organization. All right. I want to make sure we have time to jump into audits, but also we'll follow up with questions as they come in. So I will jump on in. So before we get too much into the details, want to go over the methodology in terms of how we got to this information, and also pause to say thank you for the organizations who approved and volunteered to be able to have us audit this. I know that it is sometimes a little unnerving to say, hey, you're going to talk about like my gaps and opportunities in front of everyone. But this is intentionally why I kind of blurred out any areas that would like overly directly help you see who this organization was, because at the end of the day, it's not about the organization. We're all wanting to optimize, and we're all seeing the same kind of consistent things here. And so for context for everyone else, we did not have any access to behind the scenes information. We tracked it like a normal donor. We went from the donate button, we made a gift. We looked at the fields that people had to fill in, which ones were required, which ones were not. We looked at what payment methods were available. We looked at mobile versus desktop, and all of these things ultimately allow you to focus on as well around like measurement. So we looked at Google tags, different pixels that would have been on the site. Of course, without backend access, we can't confirm all of the tracking pixels that may be set up in the ways that you do it. But ultimately, this is what we were looking for in terms of, is this an organization? Is this a setup that has room to grow? Or is this something that, hey, we've got, most of the boxes checked and just need to focus streamlining a few other areas? Okay, so organization one is a community land trust. I did screenshot the beginning of this form. This is what it kind of looks like. I never want to immediately judge a form by, hey, I think this is ugly, because I am not every donor. And so it's really important to me to take a data-oriented approach, like what we'll walk through, to really understand what are the likely drops in conversion based on industry data, industry benchmark, and our own Fundraise Up studies that we've done in terms of what does a successful donation form look like. So I'll walk you through what this specific donation form looks like now. So we're on the main page of the website. We click Give Now. We effectively leave the site. Now, for the organization, we own the donation form, we own the website, but they're on two domains. And so even though it's a donation form that most people in the fundraising space would say, yeah, I'm like familiar with that, I know what's happening here, your donor does not. Your donor is not in fundraising. They are doing whatever they do for work, and they are coming here to make a moment of generosity. And so to them, it's going to feel like, hey, that URL changed. Am I in the right space? This is increasingly important with how much fraud there is going on, and how, unfairly AI is also helping exacerbate that. But we want to be able to build trust and build credibility as much as possible. And then from there, in one screen, I was just showing this before, we hit 29 different fields. 12 of those fields are required. And I want to look at like exactly what those fields include. So a phone number is required to give even just $50. An address is also required. No amount is selected when the page loads. Kind of defaults to the other amount, which is a empty blocks. Recurring is actually hidden, so it's a drop down and it's labeled donation schedule. Um, the form overflows. We looked at it on a mobile perspective, and you have to zoom out just to see the logo. So again, those signals of trust, the signals of storytelling, that's really where we want to pay more attention instead of kind of forcing them to zoom in and out on different places. And at least from where we saw, there wasn't any tag manager analytics or pixels in terms of what we could see viewable from our portion of the audit. Doesn't mean it's not there at all, but it isn't something that we readily found through, the audit of the CMS of this site. What we would change is kind of looking at that portion, having the consistency of staying on your own domain, that really just signaling trust. Address and phone are important, especially for those doing direct mail, especially for those doing SMS campaigns. However, how and when you ask for them is also really important. So I would say, so what we have at Fundraise Up are called questions. It allows the donation to go through while continuing the experience to ask the additional questions like address and phone number. You can make them be communicated as if they're required without risking the donation. That would be my recommended path forward. If not, I would actually make that potentially a follow-up communication. So if they're a first-time donor, how are you following that up? What's their donor portal experience? Are we pushing them to fill that information out later? Just a different way of getting it while getting their consent to have and use that information. So there's a few different strategies there. I like it as a question, a part of the experience. If you're not on Fundraise Up or if you don't have the option to do that, there's still other ways to get that without risking your gift or reducing the conversion experience there. Another thing I would look at is anchoring to the outcomes in terms of what are we trying to accomplish, and then moving up that monthly focus so that it's not just presented as one time with a drop down of do I want to give one time or monthly, but being able to have a little bit more of that balance and occasionally leading with that monthly ask as well, because ultimately that's going to be able to create that long-term impact as well. All right. We'll jump into another one. This is a international literacy nonprofit. Really, really excited when I opened this up and I saw these impact descriptions. This is the type of thing that we've been talking about, anchoring to impact, and they are immediately doing that well. One of the things as we, to give you context around this form, while the first one was essentially one page, this one is actually a multi-step process. And I get that question a lot around like, which one is better, a one page or a multi-step? And I like to use the analogy, it's like asking what's a better mode of transportation, a car or a plane? At the end of the day, it just depends on the destination that you're trying to get to. And it's like saying, hey, I am trying to go to the other side of the country. I could drive there and driving is fine. Or I could take a plane and I could fly there and reach my destination much faster. However, if at the end of the day that plane never leaves the airport, then you might as well have driven. It really doesn't matter at that point. That's how I see them at the end of the day. If the flow or the way at which you're getting there is still holding you back, then there is effectively no right way. Your strategy and the execution in the technology have to be aligned. And so I want to look at this particular organization because in a similar manner, they've got the multi-step piece there. However, when they click donate in the step one, the address bar changes. In step 2, the address bar changes again. And so all of this is visible to the donor. And so they may not realize where they're at because those 2 clicks were not the domain and not the address of the original organization that they have trust, that they have credibility and affinity with. And so with the 4-step form, it's great that it's multi-step, but ultimately we want to be able to ensure that there's trust signals throughout those steps as well. So a couple of things here. There were 11 required fields on that kind of first step. We want to move that to every single step has that kind of real outcome attached to it. We saw that great for one time, but when it came to monthly, that was a separate ladder, a separate giving amounts, but those didn't tie to impact. And from my perspective, monthly almost needs that more because to make that donation now and one time, it's great that I know where it's going. If I'm going to make that donation every single month and I'm going to retain, I even more want to know where that money is going, and I want to know that the impact that it's having. And so that's my recommendation there. Of course, adding on Apple Pay, Google Pay, we already, talked through one of those things, but ultimately being able to attach those impact designations to the monthly side, not just the one time, was more of the opportunity that I saw. In the flow itself, you saw one time, monthly actually comes right underneath it. And as I personally was going through the flow, I was a little surprised because it made it seem to me like I was supposed to give a one time and a monthly donation. And I don't know if the organization, is seeing this frequently with all of their donors. Again, have to go back to the data. But that's one thing I would look at, because what we don't want is like, yay, we got 2 donations, but then we got a lot of chargebacks. We got a lot of, hey, I didn't mean to do this, and actually I want my money back. So all in all, really great experience, but those optimizations, those tweaks in that experience ultimately allow you to drive more revenue and be able to see that greater impact as well. In summary, the other thing that I would look at is a more dynamic marketing consent. I think this is an opportunity to as well be able to respect how that nonprofit or how that donor wants to be able to interact, and be able to leverage those 11 required fields, some that were GDPR specific, but be able to be more dynamic with where their organization ultimately is receiving donations from. So if it's more of a US focused nonprofit, then when you have someone accessing from somewhere else that does need GDPR consent, then being able to more dynamically show that then consistently across the board. Okay, last organization, and yes, I did hide the name on the form, and yes, they are using Fundraise Up. And one of the goals I really want to focus on here is they're seeing that additional conversion rate, but that's not the end of the story. Fundraise Up is not just like, hey, here's a campaign page, roll it out, you'll make more revenue, you'll see higher donation conversion rate. You will, but it also is more of a toolbox. We have what we call elements, essentially different widgets that go on your site. We have peer-to-peer. We have what we call gift cart that allows you to storytell a little bit more. The point is not to talk about all the Fundraise Up feature and functionalities. The point is to understand there are many different ways that you can engage a donor, bring them into the story that you're telling around the impact that you have, and then ultimately move them quickly into a donation. Here we see the Google Pay that I was talking about, being able to donate with other methods, seeing one time and monthly right next to each other, really, really amazing things. The actual part for this organization that I would really focus on is the ways to give page. in the ways to give page, they have about 11 or 12 or so different ways to make a donation. And I think that's where additional images, image cards, impact descriptions, more of a visual storytelling way that you can engage the donor in those other areas. I also took a look at what is configured in Fundraise Up. So they have the pre-donation upsell on, powered by AI, but I would consider turning on the post-donation upsell. And so it's not something where we have to choose. We can enable them to both be on, and we want to give you that, empowerment to be able to select what makes sense for your organization, but then also allow AI to choose for that specific donor, for Brian who's showing up, what makes more sense to upsell to monthly before the one-time gift or after. Also enabling market consent. Marketing consent is really important for those follow-up communications, especially to new donors, what they see next. The impact descriptions that we were just saying before, really being able to quantify the impact and allow the donors to feel part of that journey. And then leveraging questions. Maybe it makes sense to capture um, the phone number and the physical address or other questions that may help you understand that donor a little bit more deeply. You can start to collect that over the life and giving of that donor and be able to do that without risking your gift and ultimately showing the donors the additional impact. You can do that for this specific organization. I really recommend gift cart as a way to do that. It's that visual storytelling that we were talking about before. It's a way to visually allow the donor to see where their impact is going, to engage in a different way, but at the end of the day still be able to quickly move to conversion, and really focus on the trust that you're establishing with that donor. In summary, if you're to look across these three audits, the takeaway points is make sure the donor knows where they're at, especially with the URL and other trust signals throughout that experience. So look at whether your donor leaves your domain, and you may know what platform you have and you get that it's something that you've paid for, you're working with, but your donor typically does not. And so we typically want to be able to show that consistently. We want to ask, if you don't already know today, how many fields are required before a payment is made, before that actual transaction point? Can you cut them? Are they all required? Are they in the right order? We want to look at, where does recurring sit and what is it called? Is it called monthly? Is it called sustainers? What does that look like? And how do we just show that in really plain language that our organization is going to be able to continue the conversation? Because if you call it monthly on the form and it's called sustainers in email, that also is confusing. We want that alignment with the strategy across channels. And ultimately, whether wallets, we were just having this conversation before, is it working on different gift types, tested on a phone, tested on different browsers to make sure that experience is holistic.
Yeah, and if I can just add something quick, Danielle,
Ah,
I
go
think
for it.
the other, I think encouragement, nudge, reminder is that, ultimately, we're talking about the giving moment on a form today, but like the donor experience is unfolding in a myriad of ways that none
Absolutely.
of us even control, right? Like donors are having experiences out in the world in their lives that are informing how they find you, how they get to you, what moves them, what inspires them, and also just the way that the world is evolving. And so, to Danielle's point, I think it comes down to this point of clarity. How are we being really clear, reducing friction, and meeting a donor wherever they are in at the right moment at the right time with clarity. And so I think this is one of the areas where we can hone in. This is where we can focus on our controllables. But I think the other encouragement is also that things are unfolding in real time in people's lives out in the world, and this is the moment where we get lucky enough to play a part in it. And so our hope is that you can have some key takeaways on, okay, what minor adjustments can we make to our form? Where can we reduce friction? Where we can show impact and be more clear? I know there's been a discussion in the chat around fees, where can we give a donor more clarity on how they can support beyond just the mission. I just thought it was kind of like a nice gentle nudge and reminder that there are things we can control, but there's also things we can't control.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as one of the things that we're constantly studying is like human behavior. Because at the end of the day, as human behavior changes, your experience needs to be able to meet them in that place. And it's going to look a little bit different organization to organization, which is why we want to see across the board, how is human behavior changing that can benefit many nonprofits? And that's I would be a little remiss to say, hey, just go do these things without talking about data. And I think there were some questions before around like, how do we do this without just being completely overwhelmed? Because it is a lot. And you really can't fix what you can't see. If you don't have a dashboard or an agent, something to be able to say, how am I performing? What are the core areas in terms of what we should be measuring? And then it's more around the initiatives that follow that, the projects, the ongoing optimizations to say, we're going to change this specific thing, and then we're going to see how it does. When you have a lot of traffic, you can get to that point sooner. When you have less traffic, it may take a few months to say this is a statistically significant, valid reason to change. That is part of the reason why Fundraise Up does so much testing, is because we can look across thousands of different nonprofits. But ultimately, if you don't have a centralized place where what is important to you matters, then you can't keep track of those things and ultimately continue to fix it. And I wanted to share these in just a little bit because these are kind of like the centralized things to know. So ask yourself, ask your team, where is this information? And I've seen this vary across very small and very large organizations deal with data really in the exact same way. No matter how many tools and assets and resources you have, this still is a challenge. And I think that's something to just call out loud, because it's an opportunity where we can all say, how do we improve? How are you doing it? What's next? Conversion rate. This is an area we've been talking about from the beginning. What is my current conversion rate? What do I want to be able to get it to? Being able to have an easy reference to where that is, but then also being able to look at average gift and by type, like looking at average gift for one time and looking at average gift for recurring, tracked completely separately, is one of the ways you really get the story behind the data instead of just seeing the blend, where one of them could be over indexing and the other one could be under. You can really optimize for that specific type of giving. The other is the share of revenue for your recurring. So if you are able to consistently see what percentage of overall transactions are monthly or have some kind of recurring mechanism, you can kind of see how predictable next year or next quarter will be and can start to plan around that. Similarly, retention rate. Always used to say that it is the North Star of fundraising, really being able to say, if someone gives this year and they give again the second year, are we consistently being able to keep them engaged? And are we able to grow their overall long-term value with our organization? Fee coverage rate. Brian, I think you were just chiming in on this. What share of donors are covering the processing costs? Let's make that clear. Let's show them the overall model and move that forward in terms of opt-in rate. But typically we see donors are happy to do that. The last thing is mobile conversion versus desktop. And this is where I was saying on agentic giving, this is happening on both mobile and desktop. And as this becomes a growing way to make a donation, we have to consider that avenue as well, not just the traditional ways that someone would find our organization.
Yeah, there's been Danielle, there's been a number of questions like throughout the session today, just about, what's the total number of fields that we would recommend on a form? And, I'd love for you to chime in, but I think my quick reaction and even seeing these 6 data points is that, there isn't one simple universal answer. And I think your donation form is something that should evolve and be iterative, that you're changing regularly based upon what you're tracking from a data perspective. So if you're seeing a large influx of people coming from mobile, for example, but they're not converting on the form, look at the amount of fields on that form on a mobile device. Maybe that's an area where you could reduce those fields, create less friction on a smaller screen to try to see if you get more donors to actually complete their gift. So there maybe isn't a universal truth here. I think the truth of it is we learn, we adapt, we iterate, and we also try to do our best to meet our donors where they are.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why, the same way, let's say we were planning an email campaign, which emails are ultimately going to lead to more revenue or lead to more impact? Is it the ones that are automated, or is it the ones that you manually send out? Is it the ones that have more of a story, or is it the ones that are more factual, letter oriented? The answer is it depends. And yes, all of them. But the same way you would look at open rate and click-through rates and all of the ways that people got onto your email list, all of this context matters. And I think the thing that Brian and I started out with is we're doing that. We're looking at emails, we're looking at advertising. If we're sending direct mail piece, we're putting in the effort. What we don't want is all of that effort to be wasted, because then we got to the giving experience and these things weren't also considered. And so the goal is not, hey, let's spin out a bunch of new initiatives and efforts to like really hone in on these things. It's important, but it has to be put aside or right next to the other strategic campaigns that we're running, so that as we're optimizing for email, as we're optimizing for advertising in the different channels, let's also optimize for the donation experience. And let's focus on what makes that impactful so that initial effort doesn't go to waste. And if you're looking for a barometer, this is part of the reason why I wanted to give you context so you can see what's possible, right? We talked about the conversion rate being nearly double, but your average one-time gift could be $164. Industry benchmark is around 139. On Fundraise Up, fee conversion rate is 81%. Industry average range around 50 to 60. 78% are seeing that 12-month recurring retention. It's going to look different from organization to organization for retention rate. Ultimately, the goal is not to say, hey, if you move to Fundraise Up, we promise you all of these numbers. You will see an immediate lift. But ultimately, where can you start today to know that this is possible and continue to optimize and work towards it? Because from my perspective, I spent a lot of time on the agency side working with many nonprofits, ultimately to be able to drive more revenue and drive more impact in those campaigns. And I constantly saw that technology was a limiting factor. And it's one of the reasons why I moved to Fundraise Up, because it shouldn't be. I really do feel like technology should be doing the work. I don't think you who have plenty of hats that you're wearing, should also now become a conversion analyst. I have had that seat. I have supported many nonprofits in that. And I think if you're already doing so many other things, like allow the technology to do that work, hold them accountable to continually optimizing your form and your experience. And like Ryan said, not just the form itself. We should demand more and go further than that. What's the donor portal experience? What's the email follow-up after? How can I be flexible with my storytelling to be able to allow my technology to empower me instead of me having to manually do all of this work now? I think that is really my focus and my goal personally. But in generally, I want to make sure that you have some comparisons in terms of like what you should be asking for. If you would like to see this audit or any of these details for your nonprofit, like I said, this is a big passion point for me. So you can get it for free. Don't need any access to your systems, like I said, but it's really an opportunity to say, where are we at? Where do we want to go from here? And really be able to maximize what that looks like in detail for your organization, because many times it's going to vary organization to organization and want to make sure that you get the resources and the information that you need. And you can do that through this audit here. Brian, am I missing
Amazing.
anything?
Well, I was just going to say that our friend and colleague Corinne is also going to drop the link that's associated with this QR code in the chat in just a minute here. So if you want to sign up for a free audit yourself, that link will be available in the chat. We can also make sure that you get that link in any of your follow-ups. I know that we only have a couple minutes left. So if there are any final burning questions, please make sure to drop them in the chat. I did flag a few throughout our conversation. So let me just scroll through. Um, you actually answered some of these in real time. There was a question earlier, Danielle, about if you don't want to include mailing address, how can you capture it? I think you talked about, once the donation's complete, actually having an additional prompt that collects more information after the donation is captured. Um, yeah, there's also been a bit around, we've debated whether or not to give the option for our donor to cover the credit card fees. What do you recommend? Do donors see it as a good thing, or does it turn them off? I think my 2 cents, and I dropped a little bit about it in the chat, but I think our 2 cents is just be really, really clear about, if you're going to ask a donor to cover any fees, let them know that they're covering fees and what they're going towards, and just be really clear, because clarity is what builds trust. And don't be ambiguous in what you're asking of your donor in that moment.
I do want to double tap on that for a moment because I also think it's another way to leverage AI in a really smart way and meaningful way. If someone is going to make a $5,000 donation, and we do see this happen online, that's probably not the place to ask for fee coverage. And so that's where allowing AI to help kind of steward that in the moment experience, because ultimately, AI is a tool. You use it in a way that should be intentional and guarded by the guardrails that you set for it. So if Brian shows up to my donation form and wants to make a large gift, maybe I don't show it, but that real-time decision making gives them the personalization at scale that ultimately is what we're looking for.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know there was also a request. I'm putting you on the spot, Danielle, but I know there was a request if we had any great world-class examples of nonprofits' websites and donation forms that we could pass along. Maybe you could help us snag just a couple that we could send to AFP in the
Yeah,
follow-up here. So.
absolutely. Yep. Can do.
Okay, great. Well, with 1 minute left, I'd love to hand it back over to Jeremiah to close us out. And just want to say thank you all for spending this time with us. We know how valuable and impactful your time and energy is. So the fact that you spent it with us means the world. And we just want you to know that we are cheering you on in the incredible, life-changing work that you're doing in your communities and around the world. So thank you for everything.